Welcome back to the course. In the last segment, we talked about the concepts of variables. It was mentioned that the variables contain useful and meaningful data that you want to store permanently because you may want to use it later on for some other meaningful purpose, such as performing more operations on top of that value. So in this lecture, we are now going to build on top of what we learned. I want you to introduce you to the very basic concepts of MATLAB, and that's from where its name, that is MATLAB, originated. That is a matrix laboratory. The MAT, M-A-T, stands for matrix, while the lab, L-A-B, stands for laboratory. So a matrix laboratory. This name has origins in the way that MATLAB actually handles the variables. So by default, whatever variable you create in MATLAB, and then when we inspect this variable and look at its size, it will say 1 cross 1. So by default, each and every variable that you define in MATLAB is going to be in the form of a matrix. In this example, since the matrix has only one entry, so the size of the matrix is 1 cross 1. So it means that matrix has only one entry. A very key question now that arises is that we know that the matrices can be of any size, such as 2 cross 3, or it can be 5 cross 5, or 10 cross 10, or any other size. So how we can actually create variables that corresponds to matrices of different sizes? So let's explain that right now. Suppose we want to create a matrix of size greater than 1 cross 1, then it will contain more than one item. Now, and we know that by default it is a matrix, so how to include more items into this matrix so that we have a matrix of bigger size? Adding more items into the matrix is super easy. We can include them by putting them in a square brackets with spaces in between the individual values. Adding rows to the matrix is also very easy. We specify it by a semicolon, which indicates to us that a new row elements are now being added. The only restriction here is that the matrices should have the same number of columns in each row. It is containing 3 columns in this particular case. So this means that the second row should also contain 3 values. Otherwise, the MATLAB is going to give you some syntax error. In this case, I have created a 3 cross 3 matrix. If we look at by using the command of use, we can confirm that it is of size 3 cross 3. If we look at the workspace and double click the variable, we can see the contents of the variables arranged as a 3 cross 3 matrix. All the values that are within this variable are displayed to us now. And we can also have a look at some more interesting stuff. For example, when we have a look at the max value, which in this case is equal to a value of 10. Similarly, the minimum value in the entire matrix is 7. The variance among the values are 0.77. Similarly, some of the other statistics, that is range, mean, median, mode, all these can be inspected over here. All the variables that you created using the command window should appear here in the workspace, and then you can choose which statistics you want to have a look at. So the key concept in understanding MATLAB is that each and every variable is by default a matrix, and then you can enter multiple values in matrix using the square bracket notation. So finally, some more useful operations that you can do here in the workspace is that when you click this variable A, so you can have access to some more operations. For example, you can rename it and give it some other name. For example, you can rename to some other name such as my underscore variable. You can also duplicate to have another copy of that. Now we have 2 copies of the same variable. Please note that the variable name needs to be unique even if they are duplicate of each other. In this case, we should give it more meaningful name, say duplicate underscore copy underscore my variable. Also, please note that the variable names do not contain any spaces, so I am therefore giving it a name without spaces. More operations that you can perform are the deletion operation and the edit values. In this case, you want to edit or update some values in the variable. And then finally, there is an operation called the save as operation. It will save it in the .mat extension, that is .mat extension. The .mat extension is the extension used by MATLAB for storing the matrices. The files which are being stored with these extensions can be easily reloaded into the MATLAB environment. So let's save it first. When we save it, we can access it under the current working directory by double-clicking it. The MATLAB automatically loads it for you into the MATLAB environment, and you can use it in the same way as you use other MATLAB variables. So let's demonstrate its use in a bit more clear way. Let's clear all the variables first. So when we double click it, it will be loaded into the MATLAB, and we may note that it has now an appropriate name that is automatically assigned to it. And that is the name with which we saved this variable. So let's do it again. When we double click it, it appears under the workspace. So that was an easy way how to load and save your matrices or variables onto the hard disk. With this, we conclude this particular segment. In the upcoming segment, we are going to cover more interesting commands and MATLAB operations regarding handling of variables. Do come back to cover that, and until then, enjoy MATLAB.